On the morning of June the 20th, 1944, 14 days after the largest amphibious invasion in history had stormed ashore on the beaches of Normandy, the United States First Army turned its full weight against a single objective that would determine whether the entire Allied campaign in France could survive its first month. The deep water port of Cherbourg, perched at the northern tip of the Cotentin Peninsula, and the answer to a supply crisis that had nearly broken the invasion before it could properly begin. For 3 days earlier, between June 19th and 22, a violent and unseasonal channel storm had torn apart the artificial Mulberry harbour at Omaha Beach, wrecking pierheads, scattering block ships, and grinding hundreds of vessels against each other in the surf, destroying in 72 hours more shipping capacity than German coastal defences had managed to sink on D-Day itself, and leaving Allied planners staring at a hard truth. Without a real port, the men and machines flooding into Normandy would eventually starve for fuel, ammunition and reinforcements, no matter how much ground the infantry seized. Cherbourg, with its sheltered roadstead, its rail connections and its pre-war capacity to handle tens of thousands of tons of cargo daily, was the only solution within reach, and Major General J. Lawton Collins, commanding 7th Corps, had already set the machinery in motion to take it, having driven his divisions clean across the base of the Cotentin Peninsula to the western coast at Barneville-sur-Mer on June 18th, severing Cherbourg and its German garrison from any hope of relief or reinforcement from the south. With the peninsula cut, Collins wheeled 3 divisions, the 4th, 9th and 79th Infantry, northward in a tightening arc, and by June 20th they were pressing hard against the outer crust of German defences ringing the city, a belt of concrete bunkers, anti-tank ditches, minefields and old French coastal forts that Adolf Hitler himself had personally ordered held to the last man, designating Cherbourg one of his so-called fortress cities, a status that legally bound its commander to defend it without surrender or retreat. That commander was Generalleutnant Karl-Wilhelm von Schlieben, a veteran of the Eastern Front given a garrison of roughly 21,000 men, many of them static coastal troops, naval personnel, and hastily organised stragglers rather than seasoned combat veterans, and alongside him stood Conter-Admiral Walter Hennecker, the naval commander responsible for the port installations themselves, a man who understood that even if the city fell, the harbour did not have to be useful to whoever captured it. As American infantry fought forward through hedgerow country and fortified high ground over the following days, the city's defenders bought time, not for victory but for demolition, methodically preparing cranes, locks, quaysides and breakwaters for destruction, a slow-motion act of sabotage that would prove more consequential than any single battle fought in the surrounding hills. The fighting intensified through June 21st and into June 22nd, when Collins issued an ultimatum demanding surrender, which von Schlieben rejected on Hitler's direct order, triggering a full-scale assault preceded by one of the largest tactical air bombardments yet seen in the European theatre, with hundreds of American and British fighter bombers pounding German positions ringing the city. 3 days later, on June 25th, the United States Navy committed Task Force 129, the battleships Texas, Arkansas, and Nevada among them, to bombard Cherbourg's coastal batteries directly from the sea, an extraordinarily rare instance of capital ships dueling head-on with shore fortifications, and the German batteries at Hamburg and York answered with disturbing accuracy, straddling and in some cases striking the American warships. A sharp reminder that even isolated and doomed fixed coastal guns remained lethal to anything that came within their reach. On land, the decisive blow fell against Fort du Roule, a granite strongpoint carved into the cliffs above the harbour where American infantry, engineers and demolition teams fought through tunnels and casemates in brutal close-quarters combat to silence guns that commanded the entire approach to the port. By June 26, with his command fractured and his strongpoints falling one by one, von Schlieben was found by advancing troops of the 9th Infantry Division sheltering in an underground bunker alongside Hennecker, and both men surrendered, though scattered pockets of resistance, particularly around the naval arsenal, held out for several more days before the last organised German fighting in the city ended on June 29th. What the victorious Americans inherited, however, was not the prize they had fought for, but its ruin. German engineers had done their work with brutal thoroughness, scuttling ships in the harbour entrance, demolishing cranes and quay walls, planting delayed action mines and booby traps throughout the port facilities, and choking the harbour mouth so completely that Cherbourg, rated by some assessments as the most comprehensively demolished port in the history of warfare to that point, would not return to meaningful operational capacity for nearly 2 months, not until mid-August. Despite the round-the-clock efforts of Army engineers under Colonel Alvin Viney working through minefields and rubble to clear the channel and rebuild what the retreating Germans had destroyed. And yet, even crippled, even delayed, Cherbourg's capture mattered enormously, denying the German Navy a base from which to threaten Allied shipping lanes, freeing 3 American divisions for the eventual breakout from Normandy, and proving to Allied commanders that fixed fortress garrisons, however fanatically defended on paper, could be isolated, reduced and broken when cut off from supply and reinforcement. The siege of Cherbourg stands today as a study in the gap between holding ground and holding value. The Germans held the city for every hour Hitler demanded, and lost nothing of strategic worth in surrendering it, because the harbour they were ordered to defend to the last man had already been destroyed by their own hands before the last man fell. A victory measured not in flags raised over rubble, but in the slow, unglamorous work of engineers clearing wreckage from a ruined port, one crane, one key, one sunken hull at a time, until the lifeline the Allies needed finally, painfully, began to flow.